Another pandemic episode of Combat Radio today with director Steve Surjik, who had to stop work on The Witcher Season 2 when the pandemic hit. He's also worked on Umbrella Academy, all the Marvel television for Netflix, The Punisher, etc. Lost in Space. Some cool stuff. Hey, last time we were talking, we went down the road on pandemic movies. We started talking about Alien, The Thing, and all the sort of appropriate logic that goes with
Indominus
it.
Strain. We talked about Indominus Strain.
Yeah.
My favorite.
I noticed Turner Classic Movies is running a bunch of apocalypse movies, and I'm not sure if this is the right time for some of those. Like, I woke up to Soylent Green the other day, Omega Man. I'm like, Soylent Green, that's this at 6 in the morning. My whole day started off very depressed about the future of mankind. 1984 was on.
Our people, Soylent Green is people. I used to have a friend that used to yell that out in the club when it got too crazy. One of my favorites is I Am Legend.
Yeah.
I loved I Am Legend. And that director actually was the producer director on C. And which we'll discover later. I have some storyboard. I was lucky enough to direct an episode of C, and I brought the storyboards from that very show that we're going to auction later. Not this on the show, but we will auction later to raise money for our kids.
I was at Warner Brothers working at Bel Air Entertainment at the time when we had a draft come through the office of I Am Legend. And at that time, it had Schwarzenegger attached with Ridley Scott set to direct. And I remember loving the script, saying, oh, this is unbelievable. I mean, they had the first half of the movie was excellent. The second half was good. And then I read like drafts that kind of came in after that with sort of needless changes and really maybe not the smartest sort of editorial work, and I kind of lost faith in the project, and then it resurfaced with Will Smith as the title role a couple years later. But
and I think that the Schwarzenegger version makes sense, and so does the director. It makes a lot of sense. But tell me, how did the final movie look like? Did it resemble the script that you read?
Pretty closely, with the exception of him in that underground lab. Remember, I think at the end he's like in some sort of like homemade laboratory where they're all at the glass and he's got a chance to save humanity. That wasn't in any of the drafts I read. But I mean, I love the casting call of Schwarzenegger and the directing call of Scott. Those two guys together in around circa 2000. That was a pretty good package, I think.
That could work, definitely.
Yeah, and in a movie like that where it's post-apocalyptic, I think Schwarzenegger was really the champion behind that, and then he went down with a heart attack, and that's what he said later took him out of it.
Really?
You like what Will Smith did in Warp Speed, to the future, which is our past, and you're working on C with Jason Momoa.
Well, we're going to see with Jason Momoa, and I was working with Lawrence on C as well, who directed I Am Legend. He's the same guy. He does the post-apocalyptic shows. He also does the those movies where they hunting games or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't want to belittle that because they're actually pretty. Well, they're phenomenal. Let's not underplay this at all. They're phenomenal.
And surprisingly, they're surprisingly relevant again, thanks to a pandemic. So.
That's right.
It's like we keep thinking we need to nominate 2 people from our neighborhood to go into training for the potential Hunger Games next year.
But getting back to, I wanted to get back to I Am Legend because do you remember when? Remember the dog that he had? He was running along with his dog, and his dog was like his best friend, and the dog could like sense the bad guy. The not the drones. What were they? They were the Walking Dead. They were infected people, and you're always like freaking out that they're going to get the dog, and of course the dog does get infected, right? He has to kill his dog. Remember that? It was. I thought it was a movie that had heart. I loved the movie. I love all those movies. I loved Omega Man. Remember Omega Man?
Well, Omega Man's making the run on Turner Classic Movies too, and I have to admit I love the premise of Omega Man, which is the original I Am Legend, but it kind of loses me when the zombies have their little board meeting, and they all kind of get together, and they're like, brother, and basically what I saw was like sort of a commentary on the hippie movement of the time, that they were like mindless zombie drones that were trying to bring down Republican Chuck Heston, but they all get together and like they're like, brother, we must stop the man. And they're like,
I have to see it again now. Now I have to see it again.
you know what I'm talking about, right? They have like normal dialogue, like basically.
Yeah, I forgot about that, but now I remember. That's right, they did. They had normal dialogue.
And it's Anthony Zerbe, and he's the ringleader, and he was like, it flashes back to him as a newscaster before he's infected, and then when they get infected, they kind of have their little hippie rallies, and they're basically like a church, or so to speak, like their druid robes, and they all call each other brother, and see it again. We should revisit that now that it's available. It's easy to find.
I'm definitely going to watch it. Yeah, I know it was so. I remember at the time I was just so struck with it. I remember he would carry fuel, and he'd put it in his generators, put the big lamps on the building, and he would have a special way to climb up to his like high tower so that they couldn't get at it. On would go the lights, the Klieg lights. And then he'd take out his machine gun and start hammering away. They weren't human, so it didn't really matter. You just kill as many as you want,
Yeah, it's a great premise for a movie. They've dismantled it and ripped it off several times since, and still made great sub movies from that movie. I always love when somebody has to basically raid a big 5 to fortify their house. That part of the film, to see what people have done or what the production designers have come up with, I should say, is always really entertaining.
Isn't it? It's always fascinating. I worked on a series. I was a producing director on a show called Burn Notice, and Matt Nix, brilliant writer, brilliant producer, but he had like every showrunner has their thing. Like they have the way of seeing reality, and as a director, it's my responsibility to try to figure out what that is and to try to articulate that in the way that they see fit. Because no one's interested in what I have to say. I'm working for the showrunner because it's their vision that people are paying to see. So I'm going, well, what is it that I found out very quickly? One of the things Matt Nix was there was always an enclave that had very high. It was hard to get to. There was barbed wire fences. There was dogs. Yeah. There was walls. There was always this incredibly difficult penetration. That was kind of it. That was the deal. So no matter where we were, you had to start thinking about fencing. So we started carrying fencing. We started producing fences. We do places on the water, brick walls. Rock, places that are right up on the mountain. Not a lot of mountains in Florida, but that kind of thing. And I'll tell you what, at a certain point, you go, fuck this. We don't need a fence here. This is ridiculous. This guy doesn't need an electric fence. And then, no, you actually do need a fence. I got it wrong there for a second. I lost my mind. I went native,
Yeah, I worked on something once upon a time, and we had like one of the survivors lived in a converted missile silo, and it had like concrete pillboxes and like anti-tank obstacles up front. Like one guy supposedly has.
That's a great idea. That's good. That's good.
You have a guy who's obviously skilled in welding, right? He's basically underground, but he can weld anti-tank obstacles, I guess. The things you don't have to really examine too closely, or you hope no one else examines too closely. But it is funny how there's some things that are done just for the impression or the visual of to make the impact on the audience.
Right.
It's on the books, brother. We have a lot of love for you. Thank you for your time, and thank you for all your work you do to help us with social services. Buddy, we love you.
Anything I can do. I love you too.
Thanks, man. Speak soon.